Call the Owatonna City Council meeting for June 17th to order. Here we have roll call.
Councilmember Trilson. Dodson.
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
Burbank.
Here.
Rainey.
Here.
Svenby.
Here.
Abraham.
Here.
Mayor Kuntz.
Here.
We have 6 of the council and the mayor present.
Thank you. Please rise and join Dave with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight, and we do have one addition to the agenda. It's 3.53, Resolution 3214, declaring state of emergency for June 16th, 2014 weather. And with that, look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Brent Svenby to approve the agenda with the change. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Dave Burbank. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item on the agenda is a financial report, and I'll ask Greg to read that.
Okay, the recap of checks over $20,000 are $100,927. That's for the DNR grant for the purchase of 215 Walnut. $33,366 to Av Fuel for fuel purchases. $72,952 to the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, which is the quarterly workers' comp premium. $344,832 to the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, which is the annual property and liability premium. $25,133 to MTI Distributing. That's for 2 items. One is the Sand Pro for Brook Tree for $16,356, which came out of the Umbrellas funds, and other various parts for park maintenance equipment and golf course equipment of $8,777. $116,056 to the Southeast Service Cooperative, that is the monthly health insurance premiums, and other expenditures of $251,394 for total expenditures presented for approval of $944,663.
Thank you, Greg. What is the council's wishes?
Motion to pay the bills.
Motion by Kevin Rainey to pay the bills. Do you have a second to that?
Second.
Second by Nate Dotson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This has been approved. Next item is the consent agenda item, which are minutes of meetings, license permits, and various miscellaneous items, contracts, etc., all grouped into one motion. What is the council's wishes?
Les?
Yes.
I would like to move 2.5-1 off and discuss that.
Discuss that separately?
Yes.
Any questions from the council? Any discussion there? Okay, with that, we will remove that 2.5.1 off the consent agenda items. With that being removed, what is the council's wishes on the rest of the consent agenda items?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Greg. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Second by Brent Svenby. Any further discussion there? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That has been approved. Now we will discuss the 2.5.1, and you have a question with that, Kevin.
Yeah. As I stated last meeting, I have received complaints in the past in regards to after these events that the trash, it ends up messy. We do have a city expense in excess of $200. This business is an ongoing closing of the park. I'm getting concerned that we're closing our park system down too often for events. Our park and trail system is for our city citizens to enjoy, and when we close them down, they don't have the right to use what they deserve to use. Looking at the notes from the park board minutes, the comments as you read that in regards to the cleanup, the comment was that they clean up the best that they can. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not good enough. I've witnessed it. Then in regards to the color that is used, the next day, the next 2 days, next 3 days, it's still there. And the comment on that is, he stated in regards to the color, it washes away easily. And if it washes away easily, why is it not being washed away that night? I don't think that it's the city's responsibility to clean up after a special event. That should be the event organizer that does that. And unless there's changes, I can't support this.
Is Hamid here to respond to that?
Yep.
Will you please come to the microphone and
Do I say my name?
yes.
Hamid Torapur. To address your issue, I never leave the park ever one time without the final okay of who is the CSO guy who's also a police officer but the park guy? What's his name?
I'm the fire chief.
I know. Who's the guy? There's a park guy I always check out with before I ever leave. I say, hey, I've blown the trails off. I've blown the parking lot off. Garbage is picked up. What else do you need me to do? I've never once left without his saying we're good to go. And the only complaint that I've ever had against me was that I would actually say is legitimate would be the color in the bathroom. And that would be the only thing I would ever say, absolutely, no problem.
Okay.
But
Well, I can tell you, Hamid, that I received calls from people along Mosier that were complaining about the garbage on their lawns.
there should be no garbage from the color. There's nothing that we'd have that would be garbage that would be out there. Like, there's only one color station, and it's far, far away from anyone else. But again, this run isn't even on the street anyways. It's all in the park. It's all in the trail system. And we never close the trail. We never close the park. People are more than welcome to come run when we do our color dash. We don't ever close the park, and we don't ever deny someone from running. You know, if they don't have our shirt or number, we don't throw color on them. But you know, these runs are huge. They go all over the country, all over the world. Like, we're literally all over the world. We raise money for all sorts of charities. We give half everything we bring back to charity. And when I do runs in Owatonna, I literally make nothing because I do it for free. I don't charge them fees up front. I don't charge them anything. I do all the work for free to help the local community. So literally, the runs I do in this town are not for my own profit. And the ones I do around the country are still, I give half of it back to the local charity, which is insane.
Nate?
There might be an issue with just the attendees after the run, just leaving trash, on the way out. Would there be an opportunity for you to?
We do the sweep. I take my truck and I drive the whole trail before I leave. I hop on the course, I drive all the way down, we blow off everything else, and if we see trash, we pick it up. I would just never leave trash.
But I mean, even where people, not necessarily on the route, but people park, a block away or whatever, if there's trash being strewn as they head back to the vehicles, would there be an opportunity to remind them, hey, let's make sure that we...
Every time, we always do. Say, hey guys, don't forget, that's just what we do. Because, everywhere we go, we want to come back. Finding new venues is never an easy thing, so we always remind them. So if there's a couple of pieces of trash, then it's above and beyond that we would ever contribute, that we would personally. If you need to drive an extra block around the course, I would be happy to drive an extra block around. Because, like I said, our goal is to make the community better and not make it worse, not people mad because there's garbage. If there's literally a piece of paper on the lawn, if it saves a complaint and having to come down here, I would gladly go pick up a piece of paper. That's not my intention, is being, to come here and... Well,
The complaints that I got, I went and looked at it, and there was garbage there, and it was a day and a half later.
And where was the garbage?
Along Mosier, on both sides of the
And
street.
what was it?
It was garbage, just papers, garbage, whatever. I don't know. I didn't go and look at it closely, but I did see garbage laying there that they said was not there before. No. But so that's what I'm addressing right now.
Right.
No, you're not getting the calls. We are.
Right.
Okay.
But if there's garbage there, then, when I went down there, because I typically do a sweep and say, hey, we have this event going on, whatever. Mm-hmm. They hate that. People on Mosier hate runs because it's always closing down their street, and they always get mad. And so they're like, oh, another one of those stupid runs coming down Mosier Street. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not the only one. There's a bunch of other ones out there. So, if they're looking for something, I apologize. But, just because it's garbage, if it's not color dash garbage, if it's not actually like our stuff, then I would beg to say, is that really from our run? Could it have been someone else? This is a park. Could it be from other kids? Could it be from something else? So it's not necessarily a color dash packet or a color dash bib or a color dash bag.
Well, but I get the phone calls after your events, and so these people, I mean, the only time that they get this garbage is after your events, so I would say, yeah. And, I'll disagree that people on Mosier don't like runs. There's people that support the people that are running in these various runs, so I can't speak for the entire Mosier Avenue and say they all hate a run. I can't do that. And although you're not technically closing down the trail, it's very intimidating for a young family with a stroller or little kids on bikes to use the trail as an event is going on. And my concern is that we are using this trail system too much for these things. The trail wasn't built for that. The trail was built for leisure activities.
One of the other problems that I got right now, and it's not your fault, okay? Mm-hmm. The park is flooded now. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be ready to go by Saturday. We need to look at what else can be done, if it can be rescheduled, because I know that the park will not be ready to go for your activity. So
the whole park, the whole trail is flooded.
Yes.
The area in the park right now is underwater, yes. I think Mike is going to probably talk about that a little bit later, aren't you?
Morehouse Park is closed down. There's cones in front. Lake Holmeyer is shut down. 18th Street entrance is shut down. So basically, you can't get on the trail from North Street to Kaplan's Woods.
At this point. So, and again, like I said, it's not your fault. Mm-hmm. No. This is nature that did this to us. We need to really look at it, either relocate or reschedule.
Okay. It's hard to reschedule because I do 200 of these all over the world. Okay. And to reschedule is not a good thing to do. Mm-hmm. So, I can look at a different route, It's not too terribly of a large race. So, it's not like I couldn't move it somewhere else.
So, I think what we need to do is address approval or not approving this tonight. But if we do approve it, then we do need to look at a relocation of it. Because it obviously can't be done there. Mm-hmm. So, I guess next question is, what is the council's wishes on this?
I guess
or is there any more discussion?
Well, my question is, if it's moved, how do we approve something without knowing where it's going to go? We don't know about safety issues being addressed, parking issues being addressed. Until we know the site, it's very difficult to approve something.
He wants to have it this Saturday. The city attorney and I are discussing, and council could approve this contingent upon or subject to the approval of the chief of police or myself or whoever you designate.
Okay.
Or park board.
Okay.
I would make the motion contingent on approval then of whoever you feel would be appropriate in that situation. I just would maybe just reiterate if you can remind all the runners to please clean up after themselves, and it doesn't happen. I'm sure it doesn't happen just after your events, but you get a lot of people somewhere. There's bound to be a little more trash, but if that can be mitigated, that would be great.
Okay.
Awesome.
We do have a motion for approval by Nate. Do we have a second to that?
I'll second it.
Second by Greg Schultz. Any further discussion?
Yes, I'd like to see at some point in the future, you mentioned all your profits go to these charities. Mm-hmm. Can we have a breakdown of what charities have benefited from your races in town?
Absolutely.
At one point last year, I think you mentioned the scholarship fund for the Park and Rec Department, correct?
It was the Park and Rec Department, but what I do is I say I will, so it's supposed to be the high school and it's supposed to be the Park and Rec Department. And I went to them and said, I will do all the event for free. I'll put everything on. I'll put all my own money into it. I'll do it for you, but you have to help me promote it. That's the only thing I stipulated should I give to the charities, that they have to help promote it. And if they weren't willing to help promote it, because that's the thing is I don't advertise. If I give half of the profit away, and you don't, and I can't put all the money to advertise. So that's the reason that the zombie run last year didn't get benefited from. My UV run last year went to the high school, Let's Smile, and the music boosters, and they each raised like almost $3,000, like I think just over $2,000 a piece. So it's about $6,500, $7,000 I think was a total for those guys last year. And then this year we did the Color Dash went to Beds for Kids and to what was it? Oh, suicide prevention, and they each got like $2,500. So I mean, yeah.
That's your profits from the race then, or?
So that's the registration. So if you pay $40, half of my money goes directly back to them. Typically, what I do is I charge a fee. So if you come to me or a charity from a different city, I charge you a fee to come to your city, and then that fee covers my band, my travel, everything for the setup of the race, and then we split the profit 50-50 of that. But if in Owatonna I don't charge that, I still pay the band $500. I pay a church $500 for the volunteers. I pay 5 staff members. So really, my half is nothing. It's just me trying to volunteer and helping my community out. So literally, I literally make nothing unless I say I'm doing a run for myself for this purpose. Is when like my zombie run, and actually we want to do it in August. That's a run for me for a purpose. But again, I specifically say this is not going to charity. This is going for this cause. This is going for this purpose. So I never, we pride ourselves on being the only national color run that gives 50% back to charity. So.
Okay. Any other comment, questions? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And I would say nay also. So it does go 3-2, 4-2. So with that, it is approved. You do need to look at, work with Chris, Chief of Police, to find another location to do it.
Sounds good.
Okay?
Sounds good. Thank you. Yep.
With that, we'll now move on to action items, and we start out with 3.4.1, first reading of proposed ordinance 5-14, vacant property registration, and we'll go to Mike Johnson.
What you have before you, members of the council, and there is a vacant property registration ordinance. This was discussed at a planning session previously with the council a couple months ago. This is a mechanism with mortgage holders of vacant properties will be required to register the property with the city and pay an annual fee of $200 per dwelling, and it will be applied to recover the costs incurred by the city monitoring and nuisance abatement, enforcement, and administrative costs. The ordinance sets out requirements for maintaining the appearance of the property during the foreclosure process until the property is sold to a new buyer. The other part of the proposal is authorizing staff to enter into an agreement with Federal Property Registration Corporation, a private business doing business as vacantregistry.com, which helps cities identify the responsible mortgage holder and who contacts the same, advising them of the provisions of the registration ordinance. Services provided by vacantregistry.com are covered by 50% or $100 of the $200 annual registration fee. A resolution authorizing the agreement will be presented when the second reading of the ordinance is given. I think this is an important thing for our city. We have had problems with vacant properties, and primarily the issue is identifying who the responsible party is at different times. This was first presented to me by the city administrator as an idea on how we could address this issue. We did a lot of research on this and determined that this is an effective way for us to identify who those responsible parties are, and then we can go through and apply our ordinances and do corrective action or code enforcement as needed. My recommendation is to approve this ordinance first reading. There is no budget impact foreseen by adopting this ordinance, and my recommendation is to approve it.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions from the council?
Would this pertain to existing properties that are already bank-owned? Or would this not, or is this only to new properties that get foreclosed upon?
This would be new properties. As they're identified as foreclosed properties, we'd make contact and go through and have them register.
So currently bank-owned foreclosure properties are grandfathered in and they're not subject to this ordinance?
If we could identify those properties as being vacant, we would have them register. The problem is we'd have to go back and try and find those properties through the court records, which would be very difficult to do. So I think going forward, as we identify those properties, they would be required to register.
How do we throw up the flag that this is being foreclosed on and that they would be informed that we need to do this?
Talking with the representative from Vacant Registry, they review the court records and they identify properties that are foreclosed on, and then they make the contact and provide them with our local information on what is required for Vacant Registry.
Okay, and this survives the entire time that that's in foreclosure, or does it have an annual retirement?
This goes for the period of 1 year when they register the property. Mm-hmm. And then they're also required, when they go through and register, they have to assign a property management person. If they don't have one available, they have to get a local one. They have to provide us with the information, contact information of who we go to when a neighbor complains, and this has been a frustration in the city for a long time, is how do we resolve this issue when we can't find the current property owner. And it also requires that property manager to go through and inspect the property and make sure that it's come up to code with our local issues.
Okay.
So, and they have to do that within 10 days of notification.
Okay. Now, with the properties that are already existing as foreclosed, is there any way this company that you're working with could go back and get those involved or included in this ordinance?
Yeah, we could have them go back through the records. I'm not sure what the process would involve.
But I think that would be a good part to do is,
I think we could accomplish that if it was approved.
Great.
Who collects the fee initially? Is it Vacant Properties Registry? Or how do we go about collecting the fee?
They collect the fee, and then we get 50% of what that fee is.
And they collect it on an annual basis?
Yes, they do.
And then my other question, does this strictly apply to foreclosed properties, or does this apply to other vacant properties in general?
It would be applied to vacant properties that we identify. That's there. If we found one that was vacant and the property was not being maintained, we could require those to be registered. So,
even though it's not being foreclosed on?
Right.
I think that's correct.
That would be correct.
Okay.
They still, even if we didn't have this program, we still have a minimum housing code and things that apply. But the important thing here is to get that property owner or responsible party in place, so it would apply.
I'm just thinking about if my neighbor's house I think is vacant, maybe it's not, I just think it is. Can I call you? What's the process then?
We will try and identify who the owner is, and then we can determine if they're, who the property owner is. We can address the issue right away with them. If not, we'll have to go through and try and do some further research.
Neat.
I guess the question I've got is how successful have they been at getting responses from a bank that's nowhere near Minnesota? Because ultimately our fallback is going to be to assess the property as we can do that now, and that would be our fallback. If they don't comply, we're back to doing the same thing. So my question would be, what percentage of compliance are they getting for communities that use this service?
I don't know what their success rate is as far as compliance, but they're driven by actually having these properties registered. That's how they generate their revenue. And I think for us, the success measure is going to be how quickly we can identify who the property owner is. And the example would be you have a frustrated neighbor. Currently, we have a very difficult time. We go through the tax records. Many times we'll go through different mortgage companies. We get different names at different times, and it's hard to determine who the actual responsible party is. So our success rate would be is if we can actually get them to complete that inspection within 10 days, send myself or one of my representatives a copy of that inspection report, and then when we have a code violation that's there, we can address that issue fairly rapidly compared to what we do currently without this program. It's very difficult on some properties to identify who the responsible party is.
Well, my concern would be enforcement. Not to mention, so let's say a property changes hands 3 times in a year, and the first property registered, or the first owner registered, and then that changes hands, there is a requirement that they report that, correct?
Correct.
And so then if they don't report, and then it gets sold again, I mean, are we back to trying to chase down a bank? If the second owner doesn't fulfill the requirement and they pass it along to a third?
It starts the process over again. The new owner or new responsible party has to go through and register. We get the inspection order that's there, and then we get the results back, and we can go through and make adjustments as needed. One other portion of the ordinance that's there that's a tool that we can use is abatement. And if we go through and we identify problems and we can't get it corrected, this authorizes us to go in and do some of the repairs or do the corrective action as far as code enforcement. And we do that now currently with our weed nuisance program. So overall, I think it's a very effective program that we can implement to correct some of the problems we have with vacant properties.
So that's basically what this ordinance is doing, is giving you that authority to do that.
Yes, it does.
Do we happen to have an estimate on how many properties we expect would fall under the program?
Currently, I do not have that information.
Any other questions? What is the council's wishes? Chair will entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to approve ordinance 5-14.
We have a motion to approve ordinance 5-14. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Second by Kevin Rainey. Motion by Dave Burbank. Any further discussion?
I would like to get a little bit more information. I will approve this is the first reading.
Yes.
So I would like to get a little bit more information on some of those finer points, I'm a little worried this could become an enforcement nightmare. Hopefully they've got it down where it's not, but I do have a little bit of concern about the process and how it's going to pan out.
Thank you. Greg.
I feel the same way as Nate. I'm not against it. I think there's some enforcement issues that could create a few issues, and I think we need to talk about those things. And I'd like to see a copy of the agreement with Vacant Registry also. They have requirements, I'm sure, what they will do or not do. Just opened up some questions that we haven't really thought about.
You could have that for us at the next council meeting?
Yes. We could have that in the council packet, and we can be prepared to answer those questions.
Okay. Any other discussion? With this being an ordinance, I ask for roll call.
Councilmember Trulson, Dotson.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Burbank.
Aye.
Rainey.
Aye.
Spenby.
Aye.
Abraham.
Aye.
All 6 ayes.
All ayes, this has been approved. Now we will move on to Resolution 3-3.5.1, Resolution 30-14, Business Development Public Infrastructure, Daikin Applied America's Project, and we'll go to Troy.
As part of the Daikin Applied Expansion Project, the city is submitting a business development public infrastructure application to the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development to finance the construction of a stormwater retention facility. As you know, Daikin is planning a 122,000 square foot addition onto their existing facility, which would result in 40 additional jobs. They are looking at starting at the end of the month here, so the timelines you got in the report here are off by about 2 months there. We have been working with Daikin on addressing stormwater for their site, working in conjunction with them to do more of a regional pond on the MnDOT property, and we've been talking with MnDOT on accomplishing that. The grant program provides up to 50% of the cost of the project. For our application, we don't have the exact costs yet. We're hoping to have those in the next week, but we do want to get this application in just because of the timelines we're dealing with on the construction project. So the maximum amount you can do is a $500 $1,000 grant. So, and that would cover 50%. So we're estimating at this point $1 million project. In all reality, it's probably more in the $700,000 range. But for the purpose of this application, we're putting in for $1 million, $500,000 grant then. And then the land would have to be transferred to the city from MnDOT, and that's going to be a point that we're going to be working on here for a while in order for that to happen. And for us to be reimbursed for the grant amount that would have to be transferred over to the city. So staff would recommend approval of the attached resolution submitting the grant application on behalf of Daikin for $500,000 for the stormwater retention pond. And this, incidentally, is the same program we use for the Viracon project in which we got the stormwater pond built out of the industrial park. So it's the same, we're utilizing a project, expansion project, to leverage state dollars to get a public infrastructure project that we need out in the industrial park.
Thank you, Troy. Any questions from the council? Hey, none, I'll look for a motion to approve.
So move.
We have a motion by Kevin Rainey to approve. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Brent Svenby. Any further discussion there? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This has been approved. I'm going to back up a little bit. I did ask Mike to talk about the current flooding issues. I know we're going to be talking about it on the issue after next, but I just wanted to have you give me an update or give us an update on what's happening.
Currently, we're in a state of emergency in Steele County and in the city of Owatonna. We had a significant rainfall event that caused some wind damage from the storms and also some flooding in our areas. I think it was necessary to go through and implement a state of emergency because we need additional resources from the state of Minnesota, and it starts a process where we can go through and receive some federal and state funding if we're eligible for that. But there are some things that we're currently doing. The city is that we have a lot of flooding. It's affecting our park systems, our trails, as already was mentioned. There are some safety concerns that are there. I know there's a lot of residents in the city along the waterways that are too close to the water. If they fall in, it's going to create a swift water rescue for us, and it's going to task our resources. So we're asking people to stay away from that swift water in those flooded areas because it can be dangerous. We do have a lot of kids that are playing in those areas. We're also asking property owners to go through and do some preventative measures in their homes. One example is to check their sump pumps regularly so that when we have a significant rainfall that those pumps work effectively. We've had some problem properties with that. Also, there are some things they can do in their home. Make sure their downspouts are in place and it actually takes that heavy rainfall away from their structure so that it doesn't go inside of their basements that are there. And then go through and help the city out in some areas that our stormwater drains can be clogged with debris. And if you see that water starting to back up, we're asking residents to go out there and remove that debris from those drains, and that'll just help out the drainage in that area and prevent some of that flooding, particularly in our intersections. There are some programs that we worked with in the past for sanitary sewer systems, installing check valves that will help in situations like this that'll prevent a lot of damage in those basements. And then, as always, you can apply for flood insurance, which will help you. Residents should review their homeowner's insurance, and they should determine what's covered and what isn't covered from a significant rainfall event and flooding that's there. We are assisting some of the members in the community. We are providing sandbags and sand. That's down at Public Works. It's in place. Property owners that want to do some sandbagging on their property, if they feel it's necessary, they can pick up those sandbags down at the Public Works building that's there. If they need additional assistance, they can contact me at the fire station at 444-2454. We currently have the Community Emergency Response Team out helping some of the property owners with moving property in some of those areas. I've been working with the National Weather Service, and I think many of the citizens in Owatonna have seen Maple Creek and the Straight River. I could tell you what our flood gauge readings are for Maple Creek. They've started to, it's crested, the water level's starting to go down. The Straight River continues to rise. I think this is very critical because if you go down into the area of the park where we have the railroad bridge down by OPU, the water is very close to hitting that railroad bridge, and we know what happened in 2010. That's a restriction, and the water backs up, and it causes a lot of problems in those areas. That's why we went through and implemented the emergency operations plan, and we're doing some protective measures that are there. Other things that we're doing is we're working with the National Weather Service. The gauges and water levels are bad, but we also have the potential for additional rainfall tonight. Earlier today, we were projecting possibly 2 more inches of rainfall. I talked to the Weather Service just before this meeting. They've indicated that they're expecting 0.8 of an inch in the next 24 hours, which is good news for us. So hopefully we're not going to get any more rain or significant rain, and the water levels will start to go down. We do have some plans in place as far as protecting infrastructure and what we're going to do if it does get worse. We've been working with many of our first responders and other groups within the city and the county. Today we had a briefing session at the Emergency Operations Center. We discussed with all organizations what their needs were, what the problems were, what they needed for resources, and we developed an incident action plan for the next 24 hours. So we're currently dealing with the issues that are there. It's unfortunate that we're having flooding in some of these areas, but if people need assistance, they can give me a call and we can see what we can do to help them out. In many areas, I know residents have asked for sandbagging, and it's very difficult to go through and sandbag private property. In many cases, it's a large area that has to be sandbagged to anchor it properly to prevent that damage from going through. And in many cases, the saturation of the ground level, the water gets through anyhow. So we're kind of looking at how effective sandbagging is before we make any decisions on what we're going to do. And primarily, we're here to protect the critical infrastructure and make sure we can keep things going. One other thing I should mention is that if we get these significant rainfalls and flash flooding, we have a lot of people that continue to drive on our streets. It's very difficult for us to get out the number of barricades that we need in those areas, especially at night. And it's very dangerous to drive the vehicles through flooded intersections or highways or county roads where we have flooding occurring. So all residents in Steele County need to take some extra precautions when they're driving. It's very easy to drive up in an area and not realize that the road is flooded. And once you get your vehicle in there, it's very difficult to get it out. So for safety, we're asking people to use extra caution when driving and to stay away from those flooded areas.
Mike, can you also give a report just if you do have a flooded basement, what you should do, take pictures of your insurance company, so on?
You want to document your damages that are there before you try and do any kind of recovery efforts or do any repairs that are there. And many times the flooding in the basement isn't covered by your insurance, but it's a good thing to go through and ask and see what is covered and what isn't covered and take pictures of that for a number of reasons, as we may be able to get some other assistance. At this time, we will do damage assessments through the state of Minnesota and through FEMA, and it won't just be the city of Owatonna or Steele County. We're looking at a regional damage assessment to see if we're eligible for any kind of federal or state assistance, but there's no guarantees that we will be eligible for that. So.
Okay. Thank you. With that, now we'll move back on to 3.52, Resolution 3114, to set a date for public hearing regarding the 2014 sidewalk project. And there we'll go to Kyle.
Good evening. This is a miscellaneous sidewalk repair. The city of Owatonna inspects its sidewalks, and also we are oftentimes we'll get a call about a bad area. So we keep a list of that. We do go out for quotes. We advertise and solicit annually for the repair. So this would be setting the public hearing for those property owners affected. I do have the roll of possible assessments here. About $12,000 worth of work, and about half of that is assessed. And we'd recommend approval. We'd be setting the hearing for the July 1st council meeting.
Thank you, Kyle. Questions from the council?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Nate to approve. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Second by Greg Schultz. Any further discussion there? Seeing none, all those in favor of this, say aye. Aye. Opposed? This has been approved. Thank you. Now we move on to 3.53, Resolution 3214, declaring state of emergency, and we go back to you, Mike, or to Chris? Mike.
This would be a request for council approval to approve the state of emergency. This afternoon, I contacted the county board chair, Doug Johnson, and the mayor of the city of Owatonna, Tom Kuntz, and requested that we declare a state of emergency, and we did get verbal authorization to do that. State statute requires us to go through and to bring that to the council and the county board within 3 days to actually approve the state of emergency. What this does is authorize us to implement our emergency operations plan. We can attain resources through the state of Minnesota and the federal government if needed, and it also starts the process for us to do the damage assessments and to be eligible for state and federal assistance for disaster funding. So my recommendation is to go through and approve this. If it's approved, once we end the state of emergency, the city council also has to pass a resolution within 3 days of ending the state of emergency. So currently, we don't know when that's going to be. Flood gauges are still rising, as I discussed earlier, so it may be a little bit of time before we go through and do that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Questions from the council? What is the council's wishes?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Greg Schultz to approve. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Nate Dodson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This has been approved. Thank you. No? Yes.
Before we go on to the next item, we talked a little bit earlier, Mike and I did, about if we have some flooded basements and we have debris, are we going to, as a city council, authorize pickup of that debris or not? I don't know if you want to make any comments on that.
In the past, we've gone through and we used the debris management plan we have in place where we sort the debris, and we've worked with other cities in the county to go through and pick up that debris off of the right-of-way. If you chose to implement this plan and we did not receive any state or federal assistance, that cost would be the burden of the city of Owatonna for that. We would keep separate records with the landfill as far as what is flood debris and what isn't. One other thing in discussions in our briefing session this afternoon, I was asked, how do you control what's flood debris and what isn't flood debris? In 2010, when we flooded, we had a lot of items that were not flood debris that we picked up. If we did this, we would implement an inspection process where property owner would take their debris out to the right-of-way, which is where we can collect it, but we'd also have somebody inspect that site to determine that it actually is flood debris, and then we would schedule the pickup of that debris for removal.
So we would be looking for some kind of approval to do that.
Is it your opinion that the damage was sufficient enough we would have a significant amount of homeowners with debris?
Usually when we have flooding or tornado damage, we'll do public infrastructure or PA damage assessments, which we've kind of completed that. The IA or individual damage assessments on properties hasn't even started. So we started maintaining a disaster log currently where we know there's problems, but it's too early for me to say what the numbers would be or make an estimate of what those debris removal costs would be.
But you would be, with an approval of this, you'd be able to start that process?
Yes, we would.
Could we make that contingent upon your opinion of after the assessment, or you've had the ability to assess that?
I think what we need to do is give permission to start the process and let him make those decisions as the process continues. So I guess kind of an impromptu, we need to make an approval of this
Debris.
Right.
Have you received any calls from people asking about this yet?
I haven't received any calls as far as debris. We're still getting calls where they have water in their basement and they need the water removed. And in many cases, the recommendation is not to remove the water until the saturated ground around that the water level goes down. Otherwise, the wall can collapse. So I think it's too early for them to go through and make that assessment of their properties. I should also tell you the budget impact, we do not have a line item for debris clearance that would cover these costs. So if we went through and approved this as a council, this would be something that would have to be funded.
You had a question, Chris, or comment? Okay, Dave.
I would agree with the chief. I've noticed a bad habit developing in the city where people are putting furniture out on the right-of-way. I noticed on Friday evening somebody pulled a couch out, put it along the curb on East Main, and the rain we got since Friday evening. Now, what's going to stop somebody saying that's flood damage? And I don't think the city should incur the cost of picking that up. So I'm not in favor of allocating any city money for debris removal at this point.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? So what we would have to do, Tom, is we would have to approve the chief to proceed with this process.
Correct.
So I guess what I would be asking for is the council's wishes, what they would prefer us to do at this point. Again, noting that it would be a cost to the city at this point.
That would be correct. And I'd also like to note that just so those homeowners understand that the debris clearance would not start until we start the recovery process. We're still doing protective measures in a response mode right now, and that may be a few days before that happens. So just to clarify that.
Mike, just a question. We would have, once the state of emergency is eliminated or we feel is no longer necessary, we would need council action to remove that. Is that correct?
Yes, we would, within 3 days of ending the state of emergency.
So perhaps we can wait until that time to make a determination on the debris.
That's what I was just thinking, is that at that meeting, which will probably be an emergency meeting,
right. Okay,
then once we end the state of emergency, we can declare this to take place. So have the paperwork and prepared for that at that point.
Mm-hmm.
The downside, if there is a downside to that, is that I think many property owners believe that this is, a past practice. And one of the concerns is they may start moving debris out to the right-of-way, and we're going to have a lot of wet debris that's going to be on the right-of-way until we actually start that process or approve it. So that may be something to consider.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm kind of in favor of when we end the state of emergency, then we would implement this. And with that being a downside, they need to realize that it's not our responsibility to remove it. And as you said, keep everything inside the basement or wherever it is, the damage is, until the water recedes. Greg.
I agree with your comments. Let's wait and see what happens here. So.
Okay, thank you. So with that being said, we will now move on to public comments, and I would ask for anyone that wishes to speak on items not on the agenda, please come forward and sign in and address the council with the mic.
I'm signed in.
Okay.
My name's John Gibson. I'm a recent addition to Owatonna, but I have been picking up trash along the parks and the trails and the streets of this town ever since the snow started going off. 90% of what I pick up is food packaging, beverage containers, foil wraps for Cheetos, things of this nature, coffee cups, and whatnot. The littering ordinance has a fine of $60 for an infraction. I submit that it would be a poor policeman who would assess a ticket for littering to a person who throws away a plastic pop bottle. I don't think it's going to happen. My suggestion would be that the $60 fine be assessed against people who dump, like the person who put the sofa out on Main Street you're talking about, or vehicles or tires or something of this nature, and that the fine for littering be reduced to $1. It is a proportional nuisance to what the person is causing who throws his trash away. And that if a person doesn't pay a $1 ticket after he's accumulated about 10, well, then maybe we could call him a dumper. But the idea here would be to see if there isn't some way we can get the police force to cooperate to try to raise the consciousness level of the people to help the park and recreation people and the city crews in order to keep this town neat and clean. It is a beautiful town, and we need to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very good ideas. So, anyone else?
Oh, Gibson. Seems very nice.
Ditto that last comment. I wholly agree with that. It's a really good idea. In fact, I know there's a computer down along by the railroad tracks, and I'm tempted to get the police there, pull that computer out, read on the hard drive whose that is, slap them with the fine. It's happened before. Down on the end of Vine Street, garbage bag was thrown off in the street, and I walked by and I see that there's papers in there. Call the police. They went and tagged the guy that was littering. But anyway, what I want to get to is I got a couple other things on our use of killer chemicals. Several weeks ago at the farmers market in Central Park, it was set up with the Keep Children and Pets Off flags right there. Why? I'm still waiting for a response to my request to not use these chemicals on city property. Let me rephrase that. I received a response about a month or two ago that was just like the marketing literature from the chemical companies. I want an intelligent response as to what our policy is and why am I being forced with my property taxes to make sure that we don't have errant dandelions or clover or any other diverse population of plants on our properties. A neighbor came by the other day. He lives backyard across the street, and he knows that I'm a big gardener, and he came over and was asking me for my advice on pruning tomato plants. And so I walked over with him, and I don't prune my tomato plants, but years ago I used to, and I'm showing you how to prune this, and lo and behold, I see two of his plants are herbicide damage. And I'm pointing it out to him, and he said, "Where did it come from?" And I said, "It could be drift, it could be from the compost, or the grass clippings or the leaves that you put around it." But anyway, I've got 3 representatives here, 2nd Ward, and 2 council members at large that I will be following up on in terms of my request to minimize or completely discontinue the use of all these killer chemicals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to council comment, and we will start with Nate.
I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Greg?
I just want to reiterate some of the things that the fire chief said about safety. I habitually drive by Maple Creek all the time on my way home, and I got a job up there. And it alarms me the number of people that are standing right on the edge of the creek watching the water roar by. And to please be safe. That's a very important point to make. And I want to thank the city staff for all the work they've done in the last night or day here. So,
thank you, Greg. Dave?
Nothing from the 3rd Ward tonight.
Kevin?
Yeah, I agree with what Greg and Mike have said. Barriers are put up for a reason. It means stay out. Be it a roadway, trail system, you have to be smart. And the best way to protect yourself is to stay away from those areas. Allow the city to get in and get the work done that they need to do. And hopefully within the next week, 10 days, we're back enjoying our trails and everyone is safe.
Thank you, Kevin. Brent?
Nothing to add.
Thank you. Tom?
Yesterday was just another great day for the city of Owatonna with the ribbon cutting for Camp Pillsbury. It's a great addition to our community. It's nice to go up and see the international flavor that's there with all their staff and everything, so I wish them well. And Mike shared with me earlier that through a grant program, they received 240 weather radios. And Mike has given the job to Skywarn to figure out how to distribute those to where they need to go. So if you're interested in one of them, contact a Skywarn member, and they will at least evaluate if there's a need there or not.
That's the new one.
Thank you, Tom. Chris?
Yes, I have a couple of announcements. Just a reminder, the Harry Winger Marching Band Festival is this Saturday. Parade starts at 11 a.m. As you know, various streets in the city will be closed to accommodate the bands and the staging and everything. So just a reminder about that. It's a great event, and I urge you all to attend. One change that we have, our Movie in the Park, which is scheduled for Friday, June 20th, is now moved to Central Park. Because originally it was going to be in Darts Park, but of course that's closed due to the flood waters, and so we are now hosting it at Central Park. Movie starts at 9:10 p.m. Pre-movie activities start at 7:30, and you are asked to wear your favorite baseball jersey. The movie is called The Sandlot, so another fun event.
And from my standpoint, again, the safety, what I saw kind of appalling tonight when I came down here was the bridge across the dam at that Morehouse Dam. I saw people standing out in the middle of that bridge looking at the water flowing underneath them. And if something could happen there's no chance of them being saved at this point. So to keep the people out of there and keep them safe is going to be a very daunting task. So,
if I may add one more thing I forgot to bring up, many families have third or going into fourth grade children that are in the Steele County Safety Camp. It's a very popular event. It's scheduled to take place tomorrow. That has been postponed because of the flooding that we have out at Lake Comar. So that'll be held in July, and more information will be put out. But Safety Camp is canceled.
Thank you.
Well, one other thing maybe you can comment on, too, the best way for the general public to keep up with what's going on with the Rising River and stuff?
We have a public information officer that's putting information out on the emergency management Facebook page, and we also are putting out information on Twitter. They can go to the Steele County Emergency Management website, and they can link into both of those sites.
Yeah. Thank you. And with that, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Greg to adjourn, a second by Kevin. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Well, it's really whether it's fast or long.